He bought an abandoned desert station, a place everyone else avoided. But within days, something started happening beneath it. Not noise. Not wind. Something. Responding. At first, he thought it was broken equipment. Then he realized. Whatever was under that station was still active. And the moment he touched it, everything changed. Stay with me, because if you miss what he discovered next, you'll miss the most important part of this story. Adrian Wolfe had reached the kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from losing everything that once made noise. At 54, his life had unraveled so quietly it almost felt unreal. No dramatic collapse. No single moment to point to. Just a slow, relentless erosion, his career slipping away, his marriage fading into distance, friends becoming voices he no longer returned. One by one, the things that used to anchor him disappeared. Until all that remained was himself. And the truth he could no longer avoid. He stood alone beneath an endless desert sky, staring into nothing but open land that stretched farther than his thoughts could reach. The wind dragged across the ground like a whisper of something forgotten, and for the first time in years, Adrian didn't distract himself from it. Because there was nothing left to distract himself with. No phone calls. No deadlines. No expectations. Just the weight of everything he hadn't fixed. And everything he couldn't undo. Most people run from moments like this. Adrian didn't. He stood there and let it close in on him. Because deep down, he felt it, something shifting, something waiting. And if he walked away now, he knew he might never understand what his life was leading him toward. Adrian Wolfe didn't buy the desert property because it made sense. He bought it because it didn't. The paperwork was thin, the price was suspiciously low, and the previous owner had disappeared from the records as if they had never existed. Most people would have walked away. Adrian signed anyway. Not out of optimism, but because he had reached a point where risk no longer felt like something to fear. It felt like the only thing left that could change anything. The structure itself sat half swallowed by sand and time. Rusted metal panels groaned in the wind, cables hung loose like veins torn from a body, and the air inside carried the stale, metallic scent of abandonment. Nothing about the place suggested opportunity. Only endings. For 2 days, Adrian worked in silence, clearing debris, testing dead circuits, tracing wires that led nowhere. It was mechanical, almost numbing. The kind of work that kept his mind from wandering back to everything he had lost. Until the third night. The power system shouldn't have responded at all. But it did. A faint pulse flickered through a control panel he was certain was beyond repair. Just for a second. A ghost of electricity, brief, unstable. Impossible. Adrian froze. He checked the connections again. Corroded. Broken. Dead. And yet, something had moved. Residual charge, he muttered to himself, though the explanation felt weak even as he said it. Still, he followed instinct. He traced the wiring deeper into the structure, past a section of wall that had partially collapsed inward. Beneath layers of dust and sand, he found something that didn't belong, a sealed panel, different from the rest of the station's design. Cleaner. More precise. Almost. Newer. That didn't make sense. Nothing here was new. His pulse began to quicken. Adrian pried the panel open with a crowbar. The metal resisted at first, then gave with a sharp crack that echoed too loudly in the empty space. Behind it, there wasn't wiring. There was a descent. A narrow shaft, reinforced with materials that didn't match anything above ground. Smooth. Uncorroded. Untouched by time. And at the bottom, darkness. Not the ordinary kind. The kind that felt deliberate. Adrian crouched at the edge, shining his flashlight downward. The beam didn't reach the end. It just disappeared, swallowed whole. For a long moment, he didn't move. Every instinct told him to stop. This wasn't part of the original structure. It wasn't documented. It wasn't safe. And whatever energy had flickered through that system, it had come from here. From below. He could walk away. Seal it back up. Sell the property. Forget this ever happened. That would have been the logical choice. But logic had never brought him anything worth keeping. Adrian exhaled slowly, the sound trembling more than he expected. His hands tightened around the flashlight. This is it, he whispered, not out of confidence, but recognition. Because something inside him had already decided. He grabbed a length of old cable, testing its strength, anchoring it to a steel beam above. It would hold. It had to. One last glance at the empty room behind him, the surface, the known world, the version of his life that had already fallen apart. Then he turned back to the opening. And stepped over the edge. The descent was slow, controlled. But every inch downward felt like crossing a line he couldn't uncross. The air grew cooler. Quieter. He could hear his own breathing, louder than it should have been. Halfway down, the flashlight flickered. Adrian's grip tightened. Not now. The light steadied, but for a split second, in that flicker, he thought he saw something move below. Not a shape. Not a shadow. Something else. By the time his feet touched solid ground, his heart was pounding hard enough to hurt. And then he saw it. Not rock. Not dirt. But something constructed. Smooth surfaces. Faint lines etched into walls that seemed to hum with dormant energy. A space that didn't belong beneath a forgotten desert. A space that wasn't supposed to exist. Adrian took one step forward. And in that moment, he understood something with chilling clarity. He hadn't just found a hidden tunnel. He had just crossed into something that had been buried on purpose. Something no one was ever meant to find. The deeper Adrian Wolfe walked, the less the place felt abandoned. And the more it felt awake. His footsteps echoed softly against the smooth floor, but the sound didn't behave the way it should. It lingered too long. Warped slightly, as if the walls themselves were listening, absorbing, responding. The air was different here. Cooler than the desert above, but not cold. Controlled. Engineered. That realization sent a chill through him. This wasn't just underground. This was intentional. Adrian raised his flashlight, sweeping it across the corridor. The walls weren't stone, they only looked like it at first glance. Up close, they revealed something else entirely, a composite surface, seamless and precise, etched with faint patterns that pulsed almost invisibly beneath the beam of light. Like circuitry. But older. Much older. He moved forward slowly, every instinct sharpened. The tunnel widened ahead, opening into something vast, and the moment he stepped through, his breath caught in his throat. The room was enormous. Far larger than anything that should exist beneath a forgotten patch of desert. The ceiling arched high above him, disappearing into shadow. Massive structures filled the space, towers, columns, and suspended frameworks that looked like a fusion between machinery and architecture. Some were cracked with age, others covered in a thin layer of dust. But not all. Some were still active. A low hum vibrated through the floor beneath his boots. Adrian froze. It wasn't loud, but it was constant. Alive. His light landed on a central structure, a massive circular core embedded into the ground, surrounded by concentric rings of metallic components. Thin lines of dim, amber light pulsed along its surface in slow, rhythmic intervals. Like a heartbeat that had never stopped. No way, he whispered. This wasn't possible. Not here. Not beneath something the world had already forgotten. He stepped closer, drawn in despite himself. The air around the core felt different, charged, almost electric, raising the fine hairs along his arms. Then he noticed the panels. Dozens of them, arranged in curved walls around the chamber. Each one filled with symbols, patterns, and interfaces that didn't resemble any modern system he had ever seen. Not digital screens. Not analog controls. Something else entirely. Something designed for a purpose he couldn't yet understand. Adrian reached out, hesitating just inches from the surface of one panel. Every logical part of him screamed to stop. But curiosity, that old, dangerous instinct, pushed him forward. His fingers made contact. And everything changed. The hum deepened instantly, resonating through the entire chamber like a giant exhaling after centuries of silence. The amber lights flared brighter, racing along the walls in expanding patterns. Adrian staggered back. What did I just? A sound cut him off. Not mechanical. Not exactly. It was closer to a signal. A low-frequency tone that built slowly, layering over itself, rising in complexity until it formed something almost structured, like a language trying to remember how to speak. The panels around him flickered to life. Symbols shifted. Rearranged. Then aligned. Adrian's heart pounded as the realization hit him all at once. This system hadn't been idle. It had been waiting. Waiting for input. Waiting for someone. Anyone. To touch it. The central core pulsed faster now, the light no longer slow and steady, but urgent. Reactive. Responsive. And then, the floor beneath him vibrated sharply. Adrian stumbled, catching himself against the edge of a console. The hum escalated into something far more intense, filling the chamber with a deep, overwhelming resonance that pressed against his chest. This wasn't just activation. It was escalation. Whatever he had triggered. It wasn't small. And it wasn't safe. The tone shifted again, higher now, sharper, almost like a warning. Or worse. A transmission. Adrian's breathing grew shallow as a terrifying thought forced its way into his mind. What if this wasn't just a storage system? What if it wasn't preserving something? But sending it? He looked up at the towering structures, the pulsing lights, the awakening system beneath the earth. And for the first time since entering the tunnel, Adrian felt something stronger than curiosity. Fear. Because whatever this place was, it hadn't been forgotten. It had been left behind. Still running. At first, Adrian Wolfe saw only one thing. An exit. Standing in that underground chamber, surrounded by impossible machinery and pulsing light, his mind didn't go to science. Or history. Or meaning. It went to value. How much is this worth? He whispered under his breath. The answer came quickly. Millions. Maybe more. Government contracts. Private buyers. Corporations that would pay anything to control something like this. He didn't need to understand it, he just needed to prove it existed. For the first time in years, Adrian felt something close to relief. This could fix everything. The failures. The debts. The years he couldn't get back. All of it. Erased. He climbed back to the surface that night with shaking hands and a racing mind, already planning his next move. Documentation. Evidence. Contacts. He barely slept, consumed by the urgency of turning discovery into profit before someone else found out. But the next morning, something didn't sit right. It started small. A detail. The way the system had responded, not randomly, but precisely. The patterns on the panels. The timing of the pulses. The sound. That signal. It hadn't behaved like a machine waiting to be sold. It had behaved like a system waiting to be understood. Adrian went back down. This time, slower. More careful. He didn't touch anything at first. He observed. Watched the rhythm of the lights. Counted the intervals between pulses. Traced the patterns etched into the walls, sketching them in a worn notebook he hadn't used in years. Hours passed. Then something clicked. The patterns weren't decorative. They were structured. Repeating sequences. Variations. Layered complexity. Language. Not one he recognized, but not random either. Adrian's chest tightened. "This isn't storage," he murmured. Storage systems didn't communicate. They didn't adapt. They didn't respond. But this was reacting. Learning. He spent days underground after that. The surface became secondary, just a place to sleep, to eat, to gather what little equipment he could use. His real world had shifted below, into that chamber where time felt different. Focused. Alive. He stopped thinking about buyers. Stopped thinking about money. Because the deeper he went, the more impossible it became to ignore what this place represented. This wasn't just technology. It was intentional design beyond anything he had studied, built, or even imagined. And it was old. Far older than it should have been. That realization hit him hardest on the fourth day. He had been mapping one of the outer structures when he found it, a panel partially recessed into the wall, its surface smoother than the others. When he activated it, carefully this time, the system didn't surge. It responded. Calmly. Lines of light formed symbols across its surface. Then shifted. Then stabilized into something almost recognizable. Not English. But close enough. Fragments. Numbers. Dates. Adrian leaned in, his breath catching. The timestamps didn't match any modern system. They weren't even close. Centuries off. "That's not possible," he said, his voice barely audible. Unless this system hadn't been built recently. Unless it had been here. Long before the station above it ever existed. The thought hit like a shockwave. Everything he believed about this place collapsed in an instant. This wasn't something hidden during his lifetime. This wasn't a secret project gone wrong. This was something buried. Protected. Erased. And if that was true, then the question wasn't how much it was worth. The question was, why had it been hidden in the first place? Adrian stepped back, his mind racing faster than it had in years, but this time, it wasn't panic. It was clarity. Selling this would be easy. Understanding it would change everything. Not just for him. For everyone. Energy. History. Technology. This system touched all of it. And suddenly, for the first time since he lost everything, Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not desperation. Not survival. Purpose. Real, undeniable purpose. He looked at the chamber around him, the lights, the structures, the quiet intelligence embedded in every surface. And made a decision. No one else was getting this. Not yet. Because if he walked away now, if he reduced this to a transaction, the world might gain a product, but lose a truth. And Adrian Wolfe was no longer the man who walked away from truth. Not again. Adrian Wolfe hadn't told anyone. Not directly. But discoveries like his, they didn't stay hidden forever. It started with a single message. An email buried among spam and automated notifications, simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. "I believe you found something you don't fully understand. My name is Sophia Reed. You need help." Adrian read it 3 times. Then a 4th. No greeting. No explanation. No attempt to convince him. Just certainty. He almost deleted it. Almost. But something stopped him, the same instinct that had led him into the tunnel, that had kept him going when logic said turn back. So instead, he replied with 2 words. "Prove it." She arrived 3 days later. No entourage. No equipment trucks. Just a single vehicle cutting through the desert dust and a woman who stepped out like she already knew what she would find. Sophia Reed was younger than he expected, early 40s, sharp-eyed, composed, carrying herself with a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. There was nothing theatrical about her. No excitement. No disbelief. Just focus. "You went down there already," she said, the moment she saw him. Not a question. Adrian narrowed his eyes. Who told you about this place? No one, she replied calmly. But I've been tracking anomalies in this region for years. Energy fluctuations. Signals that don't match any known system. She paused, studying his reaction. You activated it, didn't you? Adrian didn't answer. He didn't need to. Sophia exhaled slowly, almost like confirmation. Then we don't have much time. That was the first moment Adrian felt something shift. Not curiosity. Urgency. He led her inside without another word. The descent felt different this time. He wasn't alone. And somehow, that made it more real. When Sophia reached the bottom and stepped into the chamber, she didn't gasp. She didn't hesitate. She walked forward. Straight toward the core. Her eyes scanned everything, patterns, structures, light sequences, processing faster than he could follow. Within seconds, she was already seeing what had taken him days to even notice. It's not just active, she said quietly. It's stabilizing. Adrian's chest tightened. Stabilizing what? Sophia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she approached one of the panels, hovering her hand just above the surface. May I? Adrian hesitated. Then nodded. She touched it. The system responded instantly, but not violently like before. This time, it adapted. The lights shifted into more organized patterns. The low hum softened, becoming almost harmonious. Adrian stared. That didn't happen when You triggered it, Sophia said. Blind input. Like waking something up in the dark. She glanced at him. This system isn't random. It's reactive to intent. Or structure. You're saying it understands us? I'm saying it understands patterns. She began moving between panels, testing interactions carefully, almost like she had done this before, or something very close to it. Minutes passed. Then she stopped. Her expression changed. Not excitement. Not fear. Something deeper. Adrian, she said slowly, this isn't a storage system. He felt his stomach drop. I figured that much. No, she continued, turning toward him, her voice tightening. You don't understand. She gestured toward the central core, now pulsing in steady, controlled waves. This isn't storing energy. Or data. A pause. It's regulating it. The word hung in the air. Adrian frowned. Regulating what? Sophia hesitated. And that hesitation scared him more than anything else. Something large, she said finally. Something continuous. She stepped closer to the core, watching the light patterns intensify and settle again, like a system maintaining balance. Think about it, she continued. A structure this advanced. Buried. Hidden. Still operational after all this time. Her eyes met his. This wasn't abandoned. It was left running. Silence filled the chamber. Heavy. Unavoidable. Adrian's mind raced. If that's true, then someone built this for a reason. Sophia nodded. And whatever that reason was, she said quietly, it didn't end. That was the moment everything changed. Not when Adrian found the chamber. Not when the system activated. But now. Because for the first time, he understood the scale of what they were standing inside. This wasn't a discovery. It was a responsibility. Money didn't matter anymore. Ownership didn't matter. What mattered was understanding what this system was controlling. And what would happen if it stopped. The system didn't just run. It adapted. That was the first thing Adrian Wolfe truly understood after Sophia Reed arrived. And it was the one detail that refused to let him sleep. Days blurred together as they worked beneath the desert. The outside world faded into irrelevance, sunrise and sunset became meaningless when everything that mattered existed underground, inside that silent, watching machine. Sophia mapped patterns. Adrian tested responses. Together, they began to see the structure behind the chaos. It's not random output, Sophia said one night, her voice low but urgent. It's balancing something. Every pulse, every fluctuation, it's correcting deviations. Deviations from what? Adrian asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled up a sequence on one of the panels, lines of light forming a complex wave pattern that rose. Then dipped. Then corrected itself. Look at the intervals, she said. Adrian leaned in. The pattern repeated, but not perfectly. Each cycle adjusted slightly, like a system learning from its own errors. Feedback loop, he murmured. Sophia nodded. Exactly. But not internal. External. Adrian felt a chill crawl up his spine. You're saying this thing is reacting to something outside the chamber? I'm saying, Sophia replied carefully, that whatever it's regulating isn't contained here. Silence fell between them. Because if that was true, then this machine wasn't just important. It was connected to something larger. Much larger. Adrian stepped back, running a hand through his hair. We need more data. Sophia hesitated. Then said something that changed everything. There might be a way. She led him to a section of the chamber they hadn't fully explored, an elevated platform partially obscured by shadow. The structures here were different. More compact. Denser. As if this area had a more focused purpose. At the center stood a console unlike the others. Darker. Still. Inactive. Adrian frowned. Why hasn't this one responded? Sophia didn't answer right away. She was staring at it. Studying it. Then, quietly. Because it's not waiting for input, she said. It's waiting for permission. Adrian's pulse quickened. From who? Sophia looked at him. And for the first time since she arrived. She seemed unsure. I don't know. That uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Because up until now, Sophia had always had answers. And now, she didn't. Adrian stepped closer to the console, his instincts pulling him forward despite the tension tightening in his chest. Then we figure it out, he said. Adrian, wait. Too late. His hand hovered over the surface. For a split second, everything went completely still. No hum. No pulse. No light. The entire chamber held its breath. Then, the console ignited. Not with the soft amber glow of the other systems, but with a sharp, blinding white light that flooded the platform. Adrian stumbled back as the ground beneath them trembled violently. What did you do? Sophia shouted. I didn't even touch it. But the system didn't care. The core below surged, faster than ever before. The steady rhythm shattered into chaotic bursts of energy that rippled through the chamber like shockwaves. Panels lit up all at once. Symbols flashed, too fast to read, too complex to process. And then, the sound came back. But this time, it wasn't just a signal. It was a voice. Not human. Not mechanical. Something in between. Layered. Distorted. Overlapping frequencies forming patterns that felt almost intentional. Sophia's face went pale. That's not output. Adrian's heart slammed against his chest. Then what is it? She looked at him, eyes wide. It's responding. The word hit harder than anything else. Responding. Not to the system. Not to the environment. To them. The chamber lights dimmed suddenly, then focused, all of them, toward the platform. Toward Adrian. Toward Sophia. Like attention. Like recognition. And then, the voice changed. Slowed. Stabilized. Almost understandable. Adrian felt the air tighten around him as a single realization cut through the chaos. They hadn't just activated something. They had been noticed. And whatever was on the other end of that system was now aware of them. The system never attacked. It never shut down. It simply watched. And in that moment, standing beneath a desert, surrounded by something that clearly recognized them, Adrian Wolfe made the most important decision of his life. He didn't run. Most people would have. Most people should have. But Adrian had spent years running, from failure, from loss, from the quiet truth that his life had drifted without direction. And every time he ran, he ended up exactly where he started. Empty. This time was different. "This isn't a threat," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "It's a system trying to communicate." Sophia turned to him sharply. "Adrian, we don't know that." "No," he replied. "But we know one thing." He looked at the glowing structures, the shifting light, the impossible intelligence embedded in the walls. It didn't hide from us. Silence. Then slowly, the system responded. The pulsing light softened. The chaotic signals stabilized into patterns, ordered, deliberate, almost patient. Like it was waiting. Sophia exhaled, her fear shifting into something else. Understanding. "We're not supposed to shut it down," she said quietly. Adrian nodded. "We're supposed to learn from it." That was the beginning. Not of a discovery, but of a responsibility. They sealed the entrance. Not permanently, but carefully. Hidden. Protected. The desert above remained empty, untouched, just another forgotten stretch of land no one cared to explore. But beneath it, everything changed. Adrian and Sophia rebuilt the surface structure, not as it had been, but as something new. Stronger. Smarter. Designed to protect what lay below, not expose it. They worked in silence at first. No announcements. No investors. No headlines. Just research. Careful, patient, relentless. Sophia developed methods to interpret the system's patterns, translating its signals into measurable data. Adrian reinforced the infrastructure, ensuring stability, power regulation, and controlled interaction. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. And slowly, the truth revealed itself. The system wasn't just regulating energy. It was stabilizing fluctuations that extended far beyond the chamber, patterns tied to the Earth itself. Magnetic shifts. Atmospheric anomalies. Signals that modern science had detected, but never fully understood. Until now. "This thing," Adrian said one night, staring at a projection of the system's output, "it's been maintaining balance." Sophia nodded. "For longer than we can measure." The implication was staggering. Humanity hadn't discovered something new. They had uncovered something that had been quietly protecting them all along. They couldn't keep it hidden forever. And they didn't. But when they revealed it, they did it on their terms. Carefully. Scientifically. Irrefutably. The world didn't react all at once. It couldn't. Because what Adrian and Sophia presented wasn't just a breakthrough, it was a contradiction to everything people thought they understood about energy, history, and the limits of human knowledge. But evidence has a way of forcing belief. And over time, the truth spread. Universities studied it. Governments tried to understand it. Scientists from around the world came, not to take control, but to learn. And at the center of it all was a man who once had nothing. Adrian Wolfe. No longer forgotten. No longer drifting. But standing at the edge of one of the most important discoveries in human history, not as its owner, but as its guardian. Years later, when people spoke about the discovery, they didn't just talk about the system. They talked about him. The man who didn't walk away. The man who chose curiosity over fear. The man who stepped into the unknown. And stayed long enough to understand it. Adrian never called himself a hero. He didn't think he was one. Because in his mind, The real moment that changed everything wasn't when the world finally believed him. It was the moment he stood alone. Broken, uncertain. With nothing left. And chose to keep going anyway. Because sometimes, the most important discoveries aren't about what you find. They're about whether you're brave enough to stay when everything tells you to leave. Adrian Wolfe didn't find his purpose in success. He found it in what everyone else ignored. The world had passed over the desert for decades, too empty, too quiet, too meaningless to matter. People saw nothing there because they weren't looking for anything. And that's the truth most people never realize. Opportunity rarely looks like opportunity. It looks like risk. Like failure. Like a dead end. Adrian's life had already fallen apart before he ever made the discovery. He had no guarantees, no safety net, no reason to believe things would work out. But that's exactly why he kept going, because he had nothing left to lose. And that's where everything changed. The greatest breakthroughs don't happen in crowded places where everyone is competing for the same prize. They happen in the spaces no one else is willing to enter. The uncomfortable places. The uncertain places. The places that feel like nothing. Until they become everything. If this story made you think differently, comment below. What's one hidden opportunity in your life you've been ignoring? And don't forget to like, subscribe, because the next story might change the way you see your own path.